I remember running down the freeway. I was 11 years old. I just ran away from my first foster home. No, maybe not my first foster home, but around the first couple of ones. And a van load of hippies picked me up. And I can't remember all their names, but I spent a good majority of the month with them. And first we drove up to San Francisco, up to Haight-Ashbury and all that, and they bought a sheet of acid. I remember it was like Dancing Skeletons, Grateful Dead, print acid. And then we drove down to Big Sur and dosed, and it was just really cool because I was, these guys were these guys and girls were older and hippies, and they weren't treating me like a child. Like they did help me out and coddle me like a kid, but like they still treated me as one of their own, smoked weed with me and all that. And after Big Sur, we drove down through Bakersfield into Las Vegas. And I was 11 years old, so Las Vegas didn't mean shit to me at the time. It was bright and it looked cool. But we kind of just drove through there, and we went to Fort Collins, Colorado. And in Fort Collins, Colorado, I remember, I guess I got shit-faced, and I was fucking crying and rolling around in the snow, and just a pretty embarrassing fucking thing. But as we were leaving Fort Collins, the van broke down, and we had a blown engine, and we had to get a rebuilt engine. And me and one of the guys in the van, we took a bus down to Denver and to try to sell acid so we can make money to pay for the fucking engine. And we sold a bunch, and then me and him got a hotel. And I remember hearing him. He's in the shower, and he goes, "Shit!" And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Oh, I'll tell you in a minute." And he comes out, and he had the acid in a cellophane pack. And he had swimming trunks on with it in the pocket of the swimming trunks in the shower. And one might ask, why was he showering with his swimming trunks on? Because we were fucking homeless and he was washing his clothes. But that night he gave me the cellophane, and I was frying balls, man. I remember watching a Marilyn Manson video on TV at the hotel, and it scared the shit out of me. And then he wanted to go to 7-Eleven and leave me in the hotel by myself. I was like, I felt like I was going to get abandoned. I was fucking, I was young, and I just felt like I just got a neglectful situation. And I was latching, And then, but anyways, we finally got enough money for the engine to get fixed. And then we drove down to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I remember going to a park there and smoking pot in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which was really cool. And then we drove up to Norman, Oklahoma. And in Norman, Oklahoma, they had a bunch of friends that we went into their stayed at their house, and they had thrown a disco party with 10 kegs. And maybe 10 kegs is exaggerating, but I had VIP pass. I was able to go back in there with the tap, pulling people's beer. I was 11 years old, and I was fucking hammered. And I'm like running and sliding on the wet, beer-soaked fucking wood floor, doing the doo-doo, staying alive. And I probably was far from getting laid, but this girl made me think that I was getting, some action, which was kind of cool that night. But then the next day, $20 at the house had come up missing or whatever, and I guess unbeknownst to me, I was being accused of it. But this was all being done behind my back. I didn't know. I hadn't taken the money. And I guess one of the people we were with called the cops on me, and I was panhandling at McDonald's, and I was trying to tell the cops, no, I'm with these people, let me get my stuff and all this stuff. And then when I went there, they were protecting themselves, and I understand that now, being older, but I was fucking really heartbroken at the time, because, they were trying to, tell the cops, oh, yeah, we don't know them, and da-da-da-da-da, because they were trying to protect themselves, they can, it's like, running around with an 11-year-old kid across state lines and shit, and there's a lot of implications in that, and they were probably getting nervous with all that and everything, but I felt, ashamed and abandoned again, and it sucked, and they put me in a juvenile hall there in Norman, Oklahoma, and it took about a week and a half before they figured it out with California, they were going to fly me back, but they couldn't afford to like send a escort with me, as a minor or whatever. So not only that, but they got the discount flight that stopped in Phoenix, Arizona before it went to the San Jose airport in California. And not having an escort, and the plane stopping, I got off the fucking plane, and I was running around Phoenix, and I was young. I know this is gonna sound racist, but I didn't realize there was that many black people in Phoenix. For some reason in my mind, I just thought it was like a white state. But I'm running around Phoenix and like crackheads everywhere, and I'm like, hey, so like, where do like the runaway kids go? And they're like, oh yeah, go to Tempe. So I hustled up some change, and I got on a bus and went to Tempe. And Arizona was cool. I was definitely during the summer because it was hot as fuck, and they had like misters at the cafes and the bookshops and all the stuff on the main strip to keep the people cool as they're passing by, which is really nice. And I finally ended up getting arrested in a park that I was sleeping at in Tempe, and someone had brought a keg down to the park, and we were getting smashed and everything, and I got arrested, and I was in that juvenile hall for about a week until they sent me back to San Jose. And then this time I finally got there, and my mom and a CPS worker was at the airport when I got there, and I think I stayed in a foster home for a couple nights that time, and then they found my grandma up in Seattle, Washington, said that she would take me, so they flew me up to Seattle, Washington, and I feel really bad because I was a broken kid, and I look back on some of my actions and I'm ashamed for them, and I was acting out. I was hurt. I felt abandoned, and I was angry and blowing up. And at one point, I hit my grandmother, and she said that she couldn't handle it anymore, so they put me in a foster care in Seattle. And I kept running from those foster cares, and I went to the Marijuana Hemp Fest in People's Park, and I'm like 12 years old at this point. Green Jello was still green Jello and not green fucking jelly or whatever they got sued into changing their name. But but I was a little hoodlum at that point. 12 years old, I had a little mohawk, and because I had realized with the hippie thing, I was like, oh yeah, I need love, and that was cool because I didn't have it, and then all that shit happened, and I was pissed, and I'm like, fuck everybody, and I kind of like started turning into this little anti-fucking establishment fucking punk rocker, and a little mohawk, and eventually, they got sick of me in Washington State, and they sent me back to California, where shortly after that, I ended up getting arrested for possession of narcotics at 13. Initially, what I got arrested for was possession with intent to sell. And that got me put on juvenile probation. At that point,